All right. And Auron MacIntyre.
How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
It's been a week. So,
It has a lot of. Things are happening in the real world. Every once in a while, these things happen, and it's the current thing, and there's kind of this relationship that I have to the current thing that is kind of over there, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to respond to the current thing, or I'm watching the current thing, and I'm kind of being tickled or stimulated, sorry, by the current thing, and then that current thing just really leaps out, and the distance between me and politics is evaporated.
yeah, it's easy to make it a consumer product. Obviously, that's in some ways what we're in the business of doing.
Hmm.
But obviously, when something like this happens, it just crashes through. It touches everyone. They had a vigil in a local park here for Charlie Kirk in my area. It's no longer something that people are doing online, that only very nerdy people or people who are obsessed with certain aspects of social media know about it. It's now something that has just shattered into the life of everybody.
Yeah. What was your take on Charlie 2 weeks ago? Let's say.
Well, I was actually on Charlie Kirk's show 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the first time I had spoken to him in person. I think, like a lot of people, uh, I had this abstract understanding of Charlie Kirk several years ago, kind of a mainstream guy who does campus work, kind of just like a nicer Ben Shapiro, that kind of thing,
Deeper voice,
owning
at
the
least.
libs, right, right, and so uh, you know, uh, always liked his work. I think, like some people at different times, I hoped that he would move a little further right or something, or be a little more vocal on something. But I never thought of him as a bad force. I always thought of him as a positive force. And then as I entered into what I'm doing now, about 3 years ago now, everybody I talked to just had absolutely nothing but fantastic things to say about Charlie Kirk, including people who I thought were pretty based, like pretty right wing, and started looking into what Charlie Kirk was actually saying instead of what I thought he was saying,
Yeah.
and recognized that, oh yeah, no, this is a guy who is certainly more in tune than he lets on, or not even that he lets on, but that that is popularly presented to people. And this is certainly a guy who is thinking his way through the issues and grappling with the biggest things of the day. And just like I said, everybody I ever talked to about him immediately had nothing but fantastic things to say about him, even when they gained really nothing from it. And that's always a good sign, that however you felt about one given political position or another, any personal interaction anyone had with him seemed to just be overwhelmingly positive. And then, of course, we've only seen more of that with his passing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was my experience.
Yeah. What was it like being on his show?
You sometimes you get into these larger shows and it's always a little bit surreal. You're talking to some guy you've seen most of your life, but you feel like you kind of know, but it's kind of strange actually having conversation with him. He was we didn't get to talk deeply about any personal stuff or anything like that. We're just going through the news of the day, and he's
Oh,
asking for
okay.
my take on a few things.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a 2 hour Tucker Carlson deep dive or something. It's 20 minutes on a show at some point.
Yeah.
So we really only just had the back and forth between
Was it?
commercials, and that's
It
about
was
it.
remote then.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right. Cool.
yeah. I wasn't in studio.
Yeah. Yeah. You've been on Tucker. Your star is rising, Auron.
I guess, yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's it's been quite the ride.
So, to get back into the weeds, or it's not the weeds. I guess it's just the battlefield at this point. I know it's too soon to say the significance of the assassination, but what's some of the grounding? Uh, like, what does it mean? Like, broadly speaking, like, how does that impact or shape where we're going or where we are, from your point of view?
Um, in some ways it shapes everything, and in some ways it's simply a culmination of where we've been going the whole time.
Hmm.
Um, you know, one of the things that guys in my sphere have been trying to explain to the wider internet, the wider right, the wider world, is politics is not a game. It's not a debating society. It means something. To be political in throughout most of history was to take life and death into your hands. Not to quote, terrible TV, but when you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. And that sounded crazy to people. How could you say that? That's not what we believe. We believe in civil discussion and working our way through things and trying to explain to people, yes, absolutely. There is a mode of politics in which that can exist, and that is the best mode of politics. But for that to exist, there has to be a certain base level of order. There has to be a certain base level of agreement. There's only so much difference, only so much division, only so much diversity, if you will, that you can allow into your society and maintain the ability to talk to each other and peacefully resolve things. You need shared values, you need shared goals, you need an understanding of the good that you can pursue inside the same moral framework. The idea that you can just let everyone do whatever they want or advocate for whatever they want or pursue whatever they want, no matter what it is, and maintain a coherent society was always a lie. It was a lie that was told to us to dissolve the structure of societies we had and remake them. But it was always going to remake them into something else that was rigid, not something else that was just infinitely open and flexible. And this is what we were trying to explain to people, that you couldn't just watch the entire country rend its moral and cultural foundations asunder and then expect the civil order to continue to operate on top of it. Not that we didn't want debate, but that if you didn't understand what made debate possible, you would lose it all. And I think that Charlie Kirk being assassinated brings that all into really sharp focus. There's a lot of people who knew we were in a cold civil war. They had a hard time saying it, but they didn't know it. Or they knew it, but they had a hard time saying it. But this really makes it feel like a hot one. It makes it feel like it could go very badly. And I don't think anyone wise wants that to happen. But the fact that now has become an incredibly sharp focus for everyone around us, I think, is important.
Yeah. I just spoke with Ronald Dodson yesterday. I'll publish that in a couple of days, but we cover the same ground that we're covering right now. And he's a writer for Claremont and American Reformer. And he brought up the wise man. Like, we hope for the wise ruler. Like, that is the best possible option. You have that. You have Chinese bureaucracy. You have Islamic, the caliphate. You have totalitarianism. And then you have the Christian ruler. And what does a Christian ruler look like? From your point of view, where do you find wisdom in a moment like this, when something goes from cold to hot? Because there's a lot of different ways that we can go. And if you see what the Trump administration might be doing, crack down on hate speech. Is that the right way to go? Like, where do we start? Where do we go from the diagnosis that you were talking about to the reaction?
Well, I think we can draw on biblical teaching. I think we can draw on philosophy. But ultimately, as you point out, what we really need is prudence. In these moments, all the procedure and all the abstract stuff in the world won't help you. What you need is leaders who can navigate a critical moment by applying both the abstract principles and wisdom that we require, but apply them to the real lived experience, the real conditions on the ground, and guide people the right way. I would say that the Trump administration managed to fly and fall in one swoop. I'm actually writing this piece now. I'll get right back to it as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
But I think that J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller threaded the needle perfectly when J.D. Vance was hosting Charlie Kirk's show to honor his fallen friend. He got on there and he made it clear that the majority of what he was doing, he spent a couple hours on the show and 90% of it was honoring Charlie. honoring his memory, his family, his faith, calls for peace, calls for order, calls for reconciliation. But sandwiched, in there was his clear thought that there can't be reconciliation until the left knows they have a problem. There's no peace with people who are still trying to hurt you. You can't make peace while you're still at war. And until progressives know that their movement is driving people to violence, until they know that the way they are conducting themselves and the way they are operating their movement is designed. It's not some weird bug, and it's designed to bring violence against conservatives. Until that is addressed, you cannot return to a situation of peace. Charlie Kirk wanted to talk it out, and you made it impossible for him to talk it out. Yeah. And if we ever want to be able to talk things out again, we can't let what happened to Charlie Kirk ever happen again. It's really that simple. Yeah. And so you need an environment where you can return to the type of world where Charlie Kirks can have conversations on campuses without getting shot. And that's not the world we live in right now. So what does it take to get to that world? Well, Stephen Miller laid it out when he was talking to J.D. Vance. And he said, hey, this is what Charlie Kirk expressed to me, which you can tell because Charlie Kirk tweeted about this as well. It's not just a made-up conversation he had with an 8-year-old on a bus. This was actually Charlie Kirk's understanding that the left's rhetoric had advanced into terrorist operation, that Antifa cells, BLM cells were communicating, planning violence, that they were getting funding from NGOs that were furthering this, deploying them to riots, encouraging them to take radical action, encouraging them to do violence to conservatives. And if this didn't get shut down, someone would die. And of course, Charlie was right. And sadly, he paid the cost for being right, but not being listened to. And so Stephen Miller says, we're listening now. And this is what we're doing. We're not locking up every person who wants higher taxes on the rich or free Medicare or abortion even. Mm-hmm. But we are saying that, no, you don't get to call for violence openly on live streams. You don't get to say, actually, we're going to murder these people, or you should be murdering these people. We don't get to operate terrorist cells on Discord and talk about what kind of violence you're going to be doing to all the people who are threatening your trans identity. We're not going to let the money flow into these organizations. Yeah. And we're going to put these people in jail. And that was the perfect balance to strike. And then Pam Bondi decided to just blow that up. We needed to thread a needle, and Pam Bondi decided to instead pick up a rock and beat that needle to death. It was just the ugliest and stupidest way to do that.
Anybody tuning in, what did she do?
She decided to get out and say that actually there's free speech and then there's hate speech. And the free speech is good, but the hate speech is bad and illegal, which is, of course, the argument the left has been making for a decade and which the right has been battling against 100%. Because for the left, any basic right-wing political position was violence, right? That was the way it was designed. It wasn't, hey, right-wingers are saying, go lynch some guy. Right-wingers were saying, I don't think you should teach my kids in school to chop their genitals off. And that was considered violence. So we have to understand that there's a difference between espousing a political viewpoint, even an unpopular political viewpoint, and openly saying this is a person that I need to kill, that this person is an existential threat. They're a fascist that's trying to take over the country and kill me. And so the only choice left to me is to kill them back. There is a difference in this type of speech. And it's a very easy one to draw, and one that Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance were making very clear. And instead, Pam Bondi used the language of the left in a frame that the right has been fighting for years. And that pretty much not only destroyed the moral authority that the right had been given by this action, but also gave a rhetorical weapon to the left that they could use to completely shut down the operation that needs to happen here. Yeah. And so it's just a disaster at every level.
Yeah. One of the things that you and is there like a right-coded word that means the same as comrade? Your friends, I guess, with
patriot friends.
You and your patriot friends have been talking explicitly about not using the frame of the left, and it seems like the left is still controlling discourse because they control the frame. How much more work needs to be done just on that level? And is that what is just going to be a tripwire for the normie cons or the bondies, the people on that level?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously complicated on a bunch of levels because obviously JD Vance and Stephen Miller did understand this. That's why they threaded the needle the way they did. So it's not like no one on the right has these skills.
Yeah.
But these have to become prerequisites for entering into public life. They have to be. You have to know. You should be taking classes in rhetoric. I mean, we should be taking them anyway. It was like the basics of education for centuries. But that should be a basic understanding when you enter into this position. I mean, it was so bad that Miller even came out and basically body checked Pam Bondi live on Twitter, corrected her on like how. Okay. I should say he subtweeted her, but it's very clear like what he was saying in that tweet.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have like members of the administration subtweeting each other in the middle of this critical moment makes you wonder what the hell is going on. Like, is anyone running comms over there? Is there is the email machine broken? Nobody can pick up a phone. What's happening? Right? Yeah. Like, I'm on the outside. I'm in professional conservative politics, I guess, at this point, but I'm not in the administration. No one's calling me to ask me my opinion on this stuff.
And you're fine with that.
And I mean, I'm not a genius on this, but like, if I know this, someone in there should know this, right? Like, if I know that someone needs to be coordinating this message in this critical moment, they should know this. Like, there's no way I know more than them about this. So why isn't someone doing this? That's the question I have in this moment. And so I don't know what possessed Bondi to take up this language, but she's repeated it. She's doubled down on it. And she's also said that you now have to bake the cake. You have to, if someone comes and says you have to print out pictures of Charlie Kirk for your memorial, you have to. And if you don't, we can, arrest you for that or lay charges at you for that. Again, just everything that the right has fought against for a decade. And just, I can't even put into words. I'm pretty good at putting things into words, and I cannot explain to you like how stupid and disastrous this is. And I mean, we're laughing and it is funny to an extent, but it's also a tragedy because if we don't do this right, the country's going to tear itself apart. It's going to rip itself to shreds.
That's a strong statement. Do you think that every once in a while, Tim Pool, God bless Tim Pool, great guy, very, very proficient at his job, but he would tweet too often for my taste, we're about to have a civil war. We're about to have a civil war. Rudyard Lynch says that too. You think we've crossed that particular river?
I'm not one of these people who says this all the time.
Yeah, you're not.
I'm saying it now for a reason. I'm sure you know. You've had the Prudentialist on, right?
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. So he had this fantastic article when the Nashville school shooting took place, called "Bleeding Kansas." And if you're familiar with the buildup to the American Civil War, you know that it didn't actually start in Fort Sumter. That actually the bloody battles that first triggered this thing were way before there was ever a Civil War declared. It was when the states were fighting over whether we would add states as free states or slave states. And the key to keeping the balance was figuring out how you could get the most of your people moving into any given state to change the vote. And so in states like Kansas, where they were trying to decide whether this would enter the Union as a free state or slave state, people, both abolitionists and pro-slavery, would flock to the state in an attempt to change the balance of the territory before it did its voting to move into the Union. And what happened is they came to blows. Like, they literally shot each other. There were full-on armed skirmishes between Americans in these border states because they were already so opposed to each other that even before a civil war had launched, that they were willing to like open fire on each other as Americans. And we're not quite there, but we're really close. We're really close. And the historical examples are many, but this is also how the Spanish Civil War started. unanswered assassinations by the left. The government refused to bring real consequences and charges on the left because they were sympathetic to the left. And eventually, the right said, "I don't care anymore. Get me Franco," because if I have to watch one more, conservative right winger get blown up by a leftist anarchist terrorist, they're just going to kill my family, and so I'm going to support this now.
So if nothing's done, then we get a Franco, basically.
That would be the good ending. If nothing's done, and the bad ending is that the left, that no one stops the left, and they just keep murdering people until we have complete reign of terror, like French Revolution style murders in the streets. Yeah. It won't happen all at once, to be clear. It's not like we're going to flip a switch and, on Thursday, your street's going to be burning. But what will happen is that if there is no answer, if the administration does not crack down under the color of law, then what will occur is the left will say, "Oh, we can kill people and get away with it because we shot Donald Trump, we killed Cory Competore, we can
we got our Luigi,
murders.
You got your Daniel Perry,
right?
And
And so that's going to be. They won't say it out loud. There won't be like an announcement at the DNC that yes, we are now the party of political assassination. But if it works and they can't win at the ballot box, which we saw they couldn't, then they'll just keep doing it. Why wouldn't they? Right?
Yeah.
They just, if you think that their humanity will stop them, just look at what they're saying about Charlie Kirk after he's dead.
Yeah.
There's none of that left.
So I've dedicated the last 7 or 8 years since I started my channel to examining the left and exploring the right. And there's a lot of it's really difficult to communicate like left, right, woke, progressive, woke right, whatever. These terms always devolve into political cudgels and cardboard boxes that we can, make very rudimentary friend-enemy distinctions of. But in a time like this, I wonder if I can lean upon your analytic powers to give a lay of the land. What is it in the left what is the left? If the left is the enemy, what is the left? And if the right is right, what is the right? Who is the right? How do they behave? They're not going to riot in the street. They're not going to do 2020. That's not what the right is. The right doesn't destroy its own property to make a point. It's something else. The left is in all tiers of government, these NGOs where the money's flowing. Every single, not every single, but probably 99% of schools from K through college to university, they have that all under their control. So when we talk about the left and talk about the right, and I've been doing this for the last couple of days because my sorrow, my shock is kind of turning into anger, and I'm focusing my anger on the poor little centrists for one reason or another. But I'm kind of making these political distinctions. The left is the party of chaos. The right is the party of civilization. I'm wondering if you can help me bring a little bit of nuance into these terms. Like, what is the left? Who is the enemy? Who is this party? Broadly speaking, how do we identify them? And then what is the right? Because that woke right label has done a lot to corrode any sort of coherence of what the right is. It's just another fascist term, which doesn't summarize it.
Yeah, I mean, that was what it was meant to do, right? So it's achieving its job.
Yeah.
But the right is the party of order. It is pronomian. It is the side that wishes to observe and reinforce the existence of natural hierarchies inside society in the hope that this will bring a level of order that allows for human flourishing. I mean, we can go anywhere you want with that, but that's kind of my general understanding. The left is the party that is looking to dismantle that order. The left, the right pre-exists the left. Because you need a right to exist. You need civilization in order to exist before you can start dismantling it. Yeah. And so the left comes along and says, okay, now we've got this order. That's great. But what about some of these people who got left out? What about some of these people who are on the bottom of that hierarchy? is there more we can do for them? And many people, I think rightly, I think this is a good human instinct, say yes. We have enough order, we have enough surplus, we have enough
Mm.
uh, you know uh, uh, things going well for us that we can take some of that hierarchy and redistribute it for the purposes of making the lives of people who are not winning better, even if we can't get them to the same place. And that works for a little while, but unfortunately, especially in a democracy, but even outside of democracies, this can occur. The political power of breaking down the order is itself vast, because all of the people who are not being well served by the order, or want to see a different type of order where they're placed on top, are suddenly a part of this project. And the more you can offer them from the fruits of the order, the
Mm.
more powerful the forces of disorder become, until eventually they break down the order that they are feeding off of. And when that starts to happen, we get situations like the one we're facing now, where much of the system is designed to redistribute the benefits of hierarchy and order, while you've dismantled the hierarchy and order itself. And so now it's a machine in search of food or fuel that it no longer knows how to produce. And then we see, I think, pretty much where we're at.
Yeah. Paradoxically, the left, or what that phenomenon that we're calling the left right now, paradoxically, what they end up creating is more and more order, the total state, your book. And so when you say that the left is anti-order, anti-power, they're actually extremely power hungry and create more and more order, or at least, I guess, more like complexity than
Sure.
order.
Complexity and order aren't the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Can you,
right.
just describe how that switch happens?
Sure. So first, I never said they didn't like power. They love power.
Okay. Yeah.
That's something they're certainly in search of. But one of the things that so these are I would not say the total state is a left-wing phenomenon, actually.
Okay.
I think that you can have right-wing total states. In fact, fascism is based on this.
Yeah.
However, one thing that the left has been a part of is the building of this managerial state. And the reason they're doing that in many ways is because they don't trust the judgment or prudence of individual people of virtue. They need a way to maintain the trick of order, the fruits of order, without producing the virtue that order requires. So how do you continue to produce large-scale benefits of order, but get rid of the things that underlie the order? Well, the way you do that is you build artificial scaffolding that allows you to outsource those decisions to a wide network of people who can manage these assets, but don't have to make individual virtue-based decisions. And that's what the managerial class does. They take all of the things that used to be done by statesmen, by kings, by wise counselors, and they try to distribute them out to a wider network of people who individually are not making as significant decisions, but have a framework that kind of allows them to artificially produce a certain level of order. This does keep the society running, but it also hollows it out from within, which is why we have an order now that is there in the sense that we're still landing planes sometimes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we're not. People are deeply sad. They're deeply empty. They're hollow because they are living artificial lives animated by artificial scaffolding that is required of them, rather than living experiences that would build virtue and give them agency inside a system that is directed towards their telos, their end.
Yeah. How is it the case that Charlie Kirk is so enraged within that context of the right wanting hierarchy and the left wanting to redistribute the fruits of hierarchy? Left in this iteration in 2025 America has been going under this intersectional broadband full redistribution on all these different fronts. Charlie Kirk, and there's tons of clips of him. I can't open up Twitter without seeing a couple clips of him now. just a brilliant, phenomenal. His rhetorical power is just on point, which makes it even more of a tragedy. But he was hitting them on all these different fronts, and he had arguments, or at least he engaged with all of their arguments on all these different fronts. And the people who are dancing on his grave, collapse him down into he's an evil fascist. He's a homophobe, a transphobe. He hates all these different minorities. He's a racist, sexist, all these different things. How is it that the left in this distributed network has used, like, why did it manifest as all these identitarians? How did identity get to become the central focus by which this political power is defended and forwarded? And why did he agitate that so much, even though he was just basically a chill guy who stood on his principles?
Well, I think that I think the first mistake for the right is, and this is mainly just kind of leftover liberal language that still, haunts the right. But the first mistake is to believe that identity is somehow not a part of politics. All politics is at some level identity politics. That's literally what the friend-enemy distinction tells you, is that the core factor that decides whether you're inside or outside the friend coalition is whether you pose a direct threat to the identity of the group. If you're seen as an existential threat to the identity of the group, then you're out, you're the enemy. If you are not a threat, if you can work with the coalition and maintain its identity, you can be inside. And so when we say a bunch of identitarians on the left, I understand the rhetoric. I understand how we got to that, because the left has been using a lot of very coarse and artificial identities in order to drive the conversation. But this is kind of what I was trying to talk about to Tucker about, is that what we need is not no identity. We don't need to abandon identity. We can't abandon identity. And when we pretend that we do, we open up that entire spectrum of real human experience for the left to completely monopolize. What we need is organic identities. What we need is healthy identities. Aristotle's cultivation of virtue has to be done in community. Its telos is based on your identity. You as a father, you as a internet personality, you as a churchgoer, you as a husband, you as a son. These are all identities, and they're multifaceted, and they make you who you are, and they also define where you should be, how your relationships should occur, and how you can maintain virtue inside those relationships. If we rend ourselves out of those relationships, if we rend ourselves from that identity, then we can't be virtuous, which is why we find ourselves where we are. And the problem with the left is not that it identified identity as a key factor. The problem is that it created these very poisonous artificial identities that in no way serve the good, that give you no vision of the beautiful or the true, that in no way point you towards where you need to go and how you can cultivate virtue. And by obsessing over those identities, they were able to create wedges inside society and tear it apart, which again is what the left does. It dismantles that order.
The just trying to think of an example of these synthetic identities, because they have, what's her name? 1619 Project, Hannah Nicole Smith or Jones.
Jones, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, she
I'm
has.
glad she's become irrelevant enough where I can't even remember her.
I know, right? Well, she did that to herself.
I think it's Hannah Joan Wallace, maybe. I don't know.
She's got she had a different screen name, anyways, on X or Twitter. But she said, there's a black identity, capital B, and that's a political identity, and you can be black but not black. And then another one that's very salient in my domain is queer. Queer is not where you put your thingy into which other thingy. It's an identity that is distinct from the sexual act. It's actually a queering of everything. So those are the examples of how they've done that. And to your point about that identitarianism being bad in and of itself, being a relic of the liberal worldview, if you say that identity is wrong, then the right has nothing to stand on. That's what I'm deriving from what you're doing. And the fascinating thing that I've been sussing out and making up my mind about the classical liberal, or I kind of want to call them gay race liberals at this point, because they're just the colorblind 1990s liberalism that was totally hunky dory for America, for a certain class of Americans at a certain point in history that is just emblazoned into our imagination. They have a extremely bad or allergic reaction to the right. To the right talking about two things: identity and power. And I think that they misunderstand the right, or this is my intuition, they misunderstand the right's relationship to identity and power. And they only think in terms of the leftists' relationship to identity and to power. I'm wondering if you can talk more, and I've been trying to articulate this too. What is the right's relationship to power? What is the right's relationship to identity? You said organic identities, but also to power, because that's what is making the centrists so wary. They do not want anybody in charge. They want things to just chill out, get along. Costco runs, gas is cheap, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody can be anybody on any television show. So they're really wary of the right. And I think at this point, this is a very critical juncture to make the case to the centrists that actually you have to accept a certain amount of power and a certain amount of authority and a certain amount of our hierarchy and a certain amount of identity for any of this stuff to work.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I guess we can sell it to them, but I don't, I have been making this case for a long time, so I'm running out of new and novel ways to apply this. But it's pretty simple. You believe you aren't ruled, and you're wrong, right? Like the liberal lie is that politics is over, that we have reached the end of history, that we set this clockwork mechanism above us called a constitution. It's full of all of our favorite principles. And once you've put this like novel piece of political technology into place, then the country more or less runs itself. And so it's not liberals running things, it's not conservatives running things, it's the Constitution, right? And that's all of our institutions are neutral, and they simply optimize for efficiency, and that's really all we want, right? Because we'll let you guys hash out the weird moral stuff on TV shows somewhere or something. But when it comes to governance, we've got smart scientific people operating these these institutions and in the favor of the whole thing. And because
and our schools will educate, not indoctrinate your children.
Right. Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Boy Scouts.
And so when you have that worldview, then you see any expression of power as a violation of your independence, your autonomy. You're not ruled by anybody, but this is always a lie, right? And this is just Curtis Yarvin's point. He said, the ape wants to think that it is free. That feels good. If your ape brain says, oh, well, I am free. I am, there's no one in charge of me. In another way, this is the oldest sin in the book, right? You shall be as gods. You're there's no one above you. There's no kings, no gods. It's just you.
No kings.
It's just right. And you make the rules, right? And but that's just never true. In fact, there are plenty of rules. In fact, there's an oppressive deluge of rules that are coming out of the system. But because you can't point to one man and say he made the rules, well, then we all made the rules. And
even the person that's enforcing the rules, you can't point at. Because he just points to somebody else.
Right. And so that's the delusion. But it was always a delusion, because in the background, interests were always operating. Every system operates for something. The purpose of the system is what it does. And so when you see a system consistently producing an outcome, you should probably wonder why. Because even if it tells you it's neutral, but it consistently comes up with a different outcome than neutral, then, well, the person in charge probably isn't neutral. That's probably not true. And someone is definitely in charge. And so this is just the thing that the Squishy Center has to get over. It's not whether but which. Someone will be in charge. Someone will rule. We will have a culture. We will have an ideology. We will have a belief system. We will have an identity. These things are going to happen. And it's not a question of will they happen. It's a question of who will decide. It's always a question of who will decide. It's always so funny when you make these things, okay, we should do what's right. Well, who decides who's right? Us. We do. That someone will. Like, that's not an actual answer. Like, coming back and being like, well, who's going to decide? Well, somebody will. Like, it's you don't just get out of jail free by pointing out that people are biased. Like, that's like the consequences will come. And so I think that's that's their major stumbling block. And I don't think they ever want to. They serve the system. They exist for the system. So they don't want to see it go, no matter what, no matter how bad it gets. They know their positions, their lifestyles, their power, their money is based on the system. And so they just want to see it last longer. They have no interest in actually seeing it reformed or dismantled and built and something new built.
Yeah. That's another trigger word, dismantled.
Sure.
What about, so if you're going really hard in the direction, whichever direction you're going, you do level criticism against the Constitution. And maybe it's just against people's worship of the Constitution. But if you scratch underneath that too much, then, I mean, where do you get to a point where you kind of wish you had the Constitution? I mean, at what point do you stop scratching, dismantling, and say, okay, we're going to land on these tenets? For you and for where you think the right is headed or should be headed, especially at this critical juncture, where is this new Constitution? Where do we start? Where's the we the people?
Yeah, so I'm glad you say that at the end, because this is really critical. The Constitution is not a document. It is not a piece of paper. No Constitution has ever been written by mankind. That's not what a Constitution is. A Constitution is a way of being of a particular
It's people. A constitution.
It's a constitution in the sense of, yes, it's how you are constituted. And when you put it into paper, or don't, as many countries haven't, that doesn't make it more or less real. It was real when it wasn't on paper, and it's real when it is on paper, and it can be less real, even though if it's on paper, if you stop living by it, if it's not your way of being anymore. Having it physically on a piece of paper doesn't make it more or less real. That's not what a constitution is. The Constitution of the United States is a beautiful document. It's a document that expresses a very particular way of being of a very particular people at a very particular time. One of the greatest people to have ever existed in the history of mankind, in my humble opinion. But that is what it is. It is a snapshot of the way that those people had been living for hundreds of years. And as Joseph de Maistre points out, no people stays the same forever. And if you don't believe him, you can listen to Ben Franklin, who told you that actually it's only a republic if you can keep it. From the very beginning, our founding fathers knew that governments change, that peoples change, that if you don't maintain the character of a people, if you don't have a moral and religious people, then the Constitution cannot govern them. These are not radical words. These are not the words of Carl Schmitt or someone dangerous. This is what our founders told us from the beginning.
Yeah.
They didn't have this idea, this insane idea that has been perpetuated by, frankly, conservatives and the moderate left at this point, or centrists, or whatever you want to call them, that the Constitution is just like this, again, like this piece of political technology that, like, once we lock it in, this is just the way things are for eternity. Like, no, they knew people were political animals and that they would change and evolve over time. And so if you are under the delusion that the same Constitution on paper is the same Constitution as the people are living right now, you're missing out. We have a Constitution as a country right now. It looks nothing like the actual Constitution. As Christopher Caldwell points out, it looks a lot more like the Civil Rights Act than it does the Constitution. But we have a Constitution, and right now it's garbage. Like, it's bad. And that's the real problem. The real problem is that if we were several people who used to support a constitutional convention, to like fix the problems with the Constitution. This is the classic, like, conservative. We just call a constitutional convention. We'll get all the states together and we'll fix all the loopholes and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of those people have changed their opinion over time because they've received counsel that, do you really want the people of today rewriting the Constitution of 1790?
Yeah.
Could
Yeah.
they? Even the best of us, could we craft a constitution like that anymore?
Well, but we still have a constitution, and I wonder who is asking the question of who we are. I guess that is probably one of the most important projects before anything can happen, is to ask that question and to explore that question. I'm wondering if there is, from your like intuition, if you know who we are, like who is America? What is our constitution? I guess we're bumbling, fat, greedy, short-sighted. I mean, we have but what's our character?
Right. So I think at the core of the American experience is the Anglo-Protestant understanding of a way of being. It's a certain kind of individualistic to a level existence, one that believes highly in freedom of conscience, the ability to speak, the ability to work hard and earn and make better, to innovate. And I think most importantly, the thing that's been denied to us but is so deeply built into our character that it's eating us alive because we can't do it, explore. We're meant for the frontier. And we don't have one anymore, and that's why we're killing ourselves. And so, not all
we
of
do.
that has
It's
survived.
called the Overton window, Auron.
Right.
Sorry,
But
go on.
no, it's okay. But yeah, I think these are, and there are larger. I cite it endlessly. People have probably tired of me hearing it, but I think Samuel Huntington's book "Who Are We" is a excellent beginning spot. It doesn't answer all your questions, but
Yeah.
if you want to get a thoughtful, moderate, centrist, but well considered position on who we are and where we can go, I think that's a good start. But of course, the answer to your question is also very complicated because I think our country is too large to answer that question anymore.
Yeah. Way too large. But at the same time, that which is the left is ruling over us because it's distributed across all these institutions, and it's made these institutions into its image. Charlie, God bless him, was killed at the site of the spread of the ideology that killed him. He went to the belly of the beast, or maybe the tumor in the belly of the beast, and that's where he was. He carved out a place there, and that's where he was rebuffed. So while we are too big to formulate a satisfactory answer to the question, who are we? We are still, by dint of our military, our monetary currency, our language to a certain extent, and our education system and other bureaucracies, we are still one thing. So I don't know. I know that everybody, the coolest people on the right default to confederalism or federalism and distributism, or those, the regionalism, localism. But we have, if the enemy is ubiquitous and systemic, there has to be a systemic response to that. And Trump, via mandate of heaven, missing a bullet just because he's a spastic showman, embodied something that would tide us over to find that identity. But that identity still has to at least be strong enough to rend apart that which is tying us together, which is rending us apart at the same time. And you're walking amongst the circles on the right, so you kind of have I'm sure you have a feeling of what is boiling, what is possibly being formulated, critiques, but also the creation. What is it called? Something that's been coming up a lot. That myth, that founding myth kind of thing. We've had several different founding myths: the Revolution, the Civil War, World War II. Now we're on the precipice of one more, and it's kind of a trying but electric time for that to be brought up.
Lost you.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
you're still
It's on my end. I'm able to go to internet sites.
This is why I shouldn't talk too much, because it just cuts me out.
Oh,
Hold
there
on.
you are.
There we are. Okay. Yeah, I was rambling. Anyways, I'm saying now's the time for that, for some sort of we the people to come to the fray, just strong enough. And that's the question about identity, and the identity has to be loose enough. Some people say some sort of civic
Froze down
religion,
on me
some sort
again.
of
Sorry.
oh, okay, some
I
sort
think
of
it's my internet.
patriotism. That's fine. I'm rambling, and I'm a man in search of a question. Anyways, while Auron is disconnected, I'm going to go up to the single super chat and read it out loud. Lemime says, seems like most of the right now agrees that we cannot coexist with these people. They have to be expelled from our society. Our very lives are at stake. Oh, and now he's frozen. Hopefully he rejoins. I'm going to go on to Twitter. I have a little handy phone. Thank you guys for tuning in. That was Auron MacIntyre. If he doesn't come back, then that would be our stream. He very graciously loaning me some of his time to talk through the current moment. Wait, here he is. And add to right. Add to right. Oh, there you are. Hey.
I don't think it's my internet. I think I'm loading things fine, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, you didn't break up for me. Maybe something else happened. I don't know. But you're a very busy man. I've taken an hour of your time. What to recapitulate, I guess, right now, what I'm looking for is a little bit of the lay of the land, which I think we've covered. But where do you think is the most important thing to focus our attention on? What is the ball that we should be, watching, or at least watching where it goes if we want to be a Gretzky about it?
So, there's what should the direct response be to like restore order, and then what maybe is the cultural healing? Is that perhaps what we're looking for here?
Yeah.
So I think that on the just actions that must be taken to restore order front, we need to go about the project that Stephen Miller outlined. We need, Antifa needs to be a terrorist organization officially declared by the White House. BLM and Antifa need to be shut down. The organizers who are responsible for coordinating any possible criminal action or discussing the possibility of criminal action need to be RICO'd. The participants in the cell that did not take direct action need to be given, they need to have the hell scared out of them so that they know that, returning to this is a mistake. Platforms like Discord, which are obviously going out of their way to facilitate this kind of violent discussion, need to have the fear of God put into them. We need to have the NGO funding that flows into these different shell organizations cut off. Those organizations need to be dismantled. And we need on the social side, the soft power side, the state, not the state action. But conservatives need to get more comfortable with people getting fired for celebrating death, these kind of things, the kind of efforts that guys like Libs of TikTok and mostly peaceful memes and aesthetics and all of those accounts have been doing on Twitter. That's the how to put an immediate halt to our spiral side. It gives us enough order, enough response, reduces enough of the threat, but without directly trampling on civil liberties, without throwing the color of law out the window, without putting things in the hands of vigilantes, so that people don't feel like they need to go out and take radical action because something is being done, a sufficient action is taking place.
Yeah.
On the cultural side, I had Jonathan Keeperman Lomez on a few episodes ago to discuss his ideas, and he had some good ones. I think name a state park after Charlie Kirk, make an exhibit in the Smithsonian or other museums dedicated to Charlie Kirk, discussing the radical violence of the left and its cost. Put cultural energy out there, build things in his name, continuing his project. But the wider question of how do we heal the country is, of course, much, much harder. Those are some of the short-term, systemic things we can do. But the answer for healing the country is twofold. It's you need spiritual revival, and you need a common identity. And those are not things easily forged. They often take wars. And I don't mean
Yeah.
in this case civil wars. I mean like an external war.
Yeah.
But the most identities come from the fact that you all fought something together.
Yeah.
That's why World War II, post World War II, America is a far more united identity of America. It goes from these United States to the United States. But
Yeah.
I don't know that we have something like that on the horizon. And so that becomes a much more difficult challenge. And I think it requires a pretty radical project of localized identity and community building, a Manhattan project of social organization that brings people together and allows them to build communities where they share values. And I'm not even sure if that can even be done with some of the leftists who are too far gone, who just don't share any value at all, who are antithetical to any of the values of order. But to the extent that that could be done, if it can be done, I think those are possible steps, but easier to say than do, to be sure.
Yeah. Again, Ronald Dodson, we were talking about similar issues, and I'll publish that in a couple of days. He was bringing up something that I saw Charlie talking. Charlie was talking to a dad and his son, and the son was getting conservative, and the dad was super liberal. And Charlie said something really insightful, that the older father figure, or the father, grew up in a generation where he really trusts the institutions and really holds them as sacred. Schools, colleges, the United States, the government, the rule of law, like law, the institution of law, and the even the market, I guess. Even though the boomers disparaged greed, they benefited quite a bit off of the stock market boom and bust cycle. But I see one of the problems being the education system, and it needs to be absolutely, utterly just gutted. It just needs to be gutted. That's what is just pouring out this chaos into the world. And that needs to be done from the top down. It needs to be just completely defunded. But there's going to be so much resistance to that because so many people's lives are built inside running those. There's so much credibility. They project American soft power still to this day, even though they're burning through their legitimacy. So it seems like there's a generational aspect, or at least cadence to this issue. And I don't think that, and so my eyes are on, the boomers, not so much. It's easy to criticize them. My generation, Gen X and millennials, we kind of have a bit of a window right now to clean things up enough for the next generation to either fail or fly. And the institutions that would educate them into wise people don't exist right now. Your podcast exists. My podcast exists, but we're not a Harvard even in conglomerate. But there's enough spicy memes that it does pull in enough young men and stuff like that.
Well, so this is going to require a mentality shift that even conservatives are wildly uncomfortable with. But it is literally what Charlie Kirk said in one of his last interviews when he was on with Doug Wilson. He said the universities have to be dismantled. They have to be. Like there's just they can't exist in their current form. And this is a guy who spends every day on college campuses. Yeah. And he says they've got to go. They're completely irredeemable. We've got to get past the idea that there has to be a Harvard. Like that, and this is how essential, this is how baked into our system it is at this point. When you say that to people, they think you're basically telling them to just live in a cave, right? They're like, if you say, we have to get rid of the university system, we can't have our entire society centered around these institutions anymore. They look at you like you're basically saying, okay, just go live in the woods in a cabin. Yeah. And it, obviously like the vast majority of civilization was built without a university. So actually that's not what you're saying at all. But as you pointed out, these institutions are so wrapped up in the identity and the way things work. I mean, the local school system is the second or first largest, employer in many in counties and in Florida. It certainly is in mine. Yeah. And so when we say we need to like take this stuff out, we are talking about completely dismantling, unraveling large portions of America as we understand it now.
Yeah.
But if we don't, the cost will be far higher. And again, this is why certain people hate me and yell at me and scream at us and call us woke or whatever. But we're just saying what has to happen. Just observably, I certainly have my own biases, but just dispassionately, like this has to be what happens. And if it doesn't, then we'll all be completely engulfed in in a terrible fire. And so the transition would be difficult. The act, but we are beyond the place where we can make small, safe changes. All the easy answers are well behind us. The off ramps were many, and we blew past all of them in our search for ease and power and wealth. And we can't do that anymore. Like, so just we have to make a big change, and a change that's going to be painful. And if we don't, then the final consequences will be horrific. And you should learn this lesson, because we didn't learn it when we let the left shoot Donald Trump and kill Corey Competor, and now Charlie Kirk is dead. And Charlie Kirk is dead for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that, frankly, the Trump administration did not take this seriously and did not take action when it should have. And I'm not laying that. I mean, these people all lost a friend, so I'm not trying to be mean to these people, but I hope that sits with them, because that's the kind of resolve we're going to need to make this work.
How do you keep from being blackpilled? Tips and tricks. Doctor's hit.
The biggest thing for me is, of course, always that, our final place is not in this world, and that, there is a beautiful and true existence beyond us, and we get to see it every day around us. But we also know that it's there for us at the end. And when a guy like Charlie Kirk, who spent a shocking amount of time in every debate trying to win people to Christ in the middle of like owning them with facts and logic. When everyone talks about this guy, I was just at a vigil for him yesterday here locally. The only thing they can talk about is how they want to be better people. Because he was a better person. And so I guess, how can one black pill with that, right? Like, who are you to give up when Charlie Kirk won? So,
amen. What's coming up for you?
No, I don't have any big projects on the horizon. The book is coming out in paperback soon. I got to finish the new forward for that. But for the most part, just keeping busy. Plenty of work these days. So
yeah, I bet. Where can people find you, and what are they going to find when they get there? I'll link it below,
course,
but I was asking.
Yeah. Of course, just Auron MacIntyre and all the social media stuff. Shows on
Auron
YouTube.
MacIntyre.
We're certainly. It's certainly nice that after a political assassination, that's the focus, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to go into any more detail on that, but that you've got to be a pretty cold heart to peddle that after someone blows someone's head off. But I guess that's the content of one's character. Anyway, the point being is, sorry, I completely. Oh yeah, we're shilling. Okay. The podcast sorry. And Blaze TV and all that stuff. So
yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt the. There's a quality to Charlie's murder that is unlike anything I've ever experienced. Twin Towers, anything.
I mean, you saw the Sam Hyde video, I'm sure, the cold open. This could be you, and I think that's just, it's pitch perfect. We could philosophize about it, but like in 2 minutes, Sam laid out everything. Everything everyone is feeling right now. So
yeah, I got into a debate with my wife about divisive rhetoric, and I'm like, God bless her, she doesn't want the country to be more divided. I'm like, we have to recognize that we are divided. We are divided. There's no way around that. We can't even build a bridge at this point until we really certainly look into that chasm and describe it, and describe the distance. And there's no way around that, at the very least. Though I seek counsel from you and other people on how to put my head on straight and not devolve into rhetorics that I'm particularly keen on falling into. But you know, there is evil in this world, and it's live and well on Discord and Blue Sky, I guess.
Yeah, that's its own nut house. I don't even. All I've ever seen is screenshots, and man, yeah.
Well, Auron, I really appreciate you as a person, as an individual, and as a content creator. You put out banger after banger tweets. I don't know how you do it. Every once in a while I'm jealous, but you're so good that I can't even be jealous. Like, that's how good your work is. So I appreciate everything you do, and especially that you give me some time to talk through this stuff. So God bless you, and I'll link to your work down below.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
All right.